Good morning and welcome to Haventree Parent Podcast, where we get a chance to talk about something that's important to us and to you before our kids wake up.
Today, we are going to be talking about how we found out that our daughter had leukemia.
All right, so like you said, today we're going to talk about our story of finding out our daughter has leukemia and just the initial stages of learning about that aspect and just understanding what her diagnosis meant and how that was going to change and affect our lives, her life, and just everything we had going on at the time. So,
and we're not going to cover all of that today. That's like a lot. It's like a lot of things. So obviously,
sorry, I'm overzealous. I guess I can compartmentalize it all, but no.
Yeah. So obviously, this is kind of like a sharp turn from the homeschool topics that we've been having for the last few weeks. But September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and it's also like Leukemia and Lymphoma Awareness Month. So ironically, Kenzie has childhood cancer and it happens to be leukemia. So, we thought that we were going to just kind of take a break from the other homeschooling and parenting stuff that we've been talking about and just kind of talk a little bit about Kenzie and our experience with that for the next little while. So, we thought it made a lot of sense to start with how we found out. That seems to always be kind of the first question. It's like, what signs and symptoms did you see? How'd you guys find this out?
Right. And that's, the hardest part I would say about this for our case is just, what people always say, like, I don't imagine this is going to happen to me until it happens to me. So then you end up in that position and you're like, it's happened. And I don't know. I learned nothing about this because I never thought it would be something I'd have to face. And we were totally, blindsided by this whole event or diagnosis because it wasn't something we were watching for, because Kenzie, we had always said, was our strongest kid. I was pretty sure she was going to follow me and go through a military career or something, where she's out adventuring the world.
Yeah, she kind of tends to be like our adrenaline junkie kid.
Yeah, so it made sense that she was just going to be, grow to be strong and confident and, a little commander or whatever you want to call her. So she was just, that's how she was. And so.
And still is, but,
Right, totally. So it was definitely a change of course, because it wasn't anything that we foresaw or even were trying to find. I know some people have stories where they were like, we tried for 6 to 9 months of just all these different things. So
weird symptoms.
There was this happening, and we had none of that. So for us, there wasn't a mystery of what's going on wrong with her. It was
we were totally blindsided. I mean, we were totally.
We walked in and here you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So we should probably start a couple days before.
Sure.
The day of. So. Kenzie was diagnosed in August of 2018. A few days before she was diagnosed, we sold some baby goats. And we had already sold many baby goats, not a big deal. And for whatever reason, this particular day, Kenzie spent hours sobbing after we sold the baby goats. Hours. So much so, she was just completely inconsolable. So much so that I ended up spending the rest of the evening laying in bed, just hugging her while she cried. And she just, kept telling me my heart just hurts. And she just was totally, there was just nothing that could console her or help her. And this is very atypical for Kenzie is a very strong-willed, or not, I don't even know that I would say strong-willed necessarily, so much as just she's a very strong personality. So she will get angry, she will get upset, but just the crying for hours is very atypical for her, especially when there was something that we could do to distract her. And I was just sort of at a loss and just laid there and hugged her and thought there are worse things I could be doing with today, but I just felt really bad for her, quite frankly. And then the next day, she was cranky and whiny. And then the day following, we had company coming, which I was dreading. Josh had to work. It was a Saturday. Josh had to work. And we had some aunts coming to see our home and our farm for the first time. And so I was, going to be alone with our wild crew, plus, having like family company. And so I'm like dreading this. Kenzie's been really out of sorts, and I'm pregnant with Obi, and, I don't know what's going on with Kenzie. So I was a little bit anxious about that. And I just remember like seeing them pull into our driveway, and Kenzie just like burst into hysterics. And so I answer the door holding Kenzie with my great big pregnant belly, and Kenzie's just like sobbing on me. And I just was like, welcome, come on in. Sorry, I don't know what's with this kid. She's just not been, herself the last couple of days. Glad to see you. How was your drive? Whatever. And I just remember like being so, I don't know, like overwhelmed and embarrassed in that moment of like just having this toddler having a meltdown, And so they spent most of the day with us, and Kenzie started complaining that her ankle hurt, wanted to be carried all day long, so of course, like my aunts wanted to go out and see the farm, see the animals. My one aunt is like an amazing photographer, so she was taking pictures of all the animals, and the kids wanted to show her everything. And so we were like walking around the property a lot, and Kenzie wanted to be carried everywhere. And it was hot, it was August, I'm great big pregnant, and so I was not thrilled about carrying her around, but you just kind of go about the day. But she was all day just cranky, complaining that her ankle hurt all day. So I'm like, maybe she hurt herself a couple days ago and she's only just now able to verbalize it, and that's why she's been cranky like the last couple of days.
Yeah, we've never really figured out what was the cause or how that pain started. It was just sort of like she came home from going to a playground, and then her leg hurt for the next few days, and she wouldn't want to walk. So finally I got home from work, I think it was that Friday right after your aunts got here. Saturday after your aunts got here, and it was like
she just continued.
She still was, limping around. So like we ate dinner, and then I was like, I think we should take her in, at least get a little boot thing, because we had already done that once with Sonia, who had broken his leg doing gymnastics, and so it was like, it's possible, whatever,
that she has an injury that we just didn't know about,
hairline fracture or something. So, I was like, let's go get something, figured out, and an X-ray at least, so we know if this is a serious pain or if it's just she has a bruise. And
our 2-year-old being
she's 2. Yeah.
So, and the nice thing was, because we had family, my mom was up. So typically taking kids to the doctors, taking them to the hospital, that would be on me. But because we were thinking she had like an ankle injury, I knew that we would have an X-ray. And because I was, almost 20 weeks pregnant, I knew that I couldn't sit with her for the X-ray. So Josh and I decided to go together Saturday evening after the other kids went to bed. And my mom stayed with the kids at the house so that we could, do that. So, do you want to talk about like the whole drive there? So Josh really wanted us to go.
Yeah.
And I just was like, this is so dumb. Like, we're going to go.
Well, we do this with all the kids. Like, they'll all get an injury, and like one of us will be on the side of the kid, like getting help or whatever.
Yeah. Like we need to take even just recently with Obi, I was like, he needs stitches. And Josh was like, I don't think he needs
super
stitches.
Glue. We'll just super glue
We're
it.
fine. And I was like, he's a baby and it's between his eyes. Like he does need stitches.
He ended up getting 3. He did need stitches. So,
but it was the same way with Sai. I was like, he's fine. And Josh was like, I really think we should take him. They had a broken foot.
Yeah.
So, so with this one, Josh was like, your mom's here. We should just take her. And the whole drive, I'm like, this is so stupid. We're going to go. It's a Saturday night, so I'm sure they're going to be packed.
Sure.
We're going to go, and they're going to be like, what happened? We're going to be like, no idea. She's just limping, and they're going to just think that we're idiots or incompetent or whatever,
Exactly.
And so the whole drive, I'm like, we should just turn around and go home. Like, this is so dumb, But we went, and we were back pretty quickly. And so we're back in the room, and just explain, like, she's 2, she's very adventurous, She's been complaining that her foot hurts. It's been consistently just the one foot, which makes us a little bit more suspicious that maybe there is something going on. But we don't really know what happened. We just want to make sure she's fine. And they were very nice, And so, they were like, okay, we'll get the x-ray. There was like a nurse practitioner there that was like taking care of us and our nurse. And she asked about the bruises on Kenzie's legs. And I really hadn't thought a whole lot about it. So as we said, Kenzie has kind of always been sort of our daredevil, adrenaline junkie child. She climbed, even at 2, she would climb higher than the other kids in the tree. The other kids would be like, okay, this is where I feel safe. And Kenzie had to go 3 more feet just, to prove that she could. Or she would jump off of the playground equipment. If she found out the other kids were afraid to or wouldn't, she had to do it, And we live on a farm and we have a lot of kids and they wrestle. And so I had never really thought anything of the fact that her legs are kind of like one big bruise.
Yeah, just play bumps.
Yeah. And she only had bruises on her legs. So it was just sort of she's, and lots of kids have bruises on their legs and arms. It's a sign of a healthy kid that plays a lot, right? And she has more bruises than my other kids had because she's a wild thing,
Right.
And we live on a farm now.
I'm pretty sure that was the summer that we had just finished putting up the playground.
Yeah, we had just moved in. We had just finished putting up the playground. They pretty much lived outside all summer, So yeah, she's got bruises on her legs because she's more active than most kids. Our family is more active and she's a daredevil.
Right.
So they asked about the bruises. We're we just kind of explained and they were like, okay, we'll get the x-ray and then we should get you out here, no problem. So a little while later, another doc comes in and does another assessment of her and asks about the bruises. And I started to get kind of annoyed. And my concern and annoyance was we have this kid with this supposedly unknown injury and a lot of bruises. So being in the health field, we've had lots of abused kids that come in with unknown injuries or injuries that don't make sense, where the reason for that is because it was an injury inflicted by a parent or an older sibling or whatever, right? So I'm thinking they're asking about these bruises because she has an unexplained injury that we don't know what happened, and they wanted a second doctor's opinion because they're going to refer us to children's services. That was my fear. And so I'm getting more and more irritated as the second doc is asking about Kenzie's bruises and how she got them and what we think happened to her ankle and all of this. So, in the back of my mind, I'm like, great, now we're going to have to deal with children's services and just everything that comes with that. And, and this is ridiculous. So they did the x-ray and the nurse practitioner comes back in and she says, the x-ray looked good. But we want to do a little bit of blood work, just to make sure there's nothing going on with the bruises or that's causing the bruises.
Right, which is a sharp turn for the whole where Katie's thoughts were going. She let me know somewhere along that. I think we moved rooms, and she was like, "I don't know why they're moving rooms because that wouldn't make sense, but there must be something else going on, and it's making me nervous."
Yeah.
And so I think they're thinking that we hurt her or something, and I don't know what they're going to say. So be prepared for something weird. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do now either because now my mind is freaking out. What are they thinking? What do they want to do? Yeah.
So I kind of went through 2 phases where initially I'm thinking I'm getting angry and irritated because I think we're going to get a children's services referral.
Right.
But the moment they said they wanted to do blood work and make sure there was no issue, and they wanted us to go to a different room. That was kind of the moment of like, oh crap, you know.
There's other things going on here.
This is something else entirely.
Yeah.
Because typically, you know, if you were thinking that there might be even like a blood disorder or something like that, usually that type of situation is not going to be diagnosed in the emergency room. Like they would refer you to your family doctor for follow-up. So the fact that they wanted to do blood work right there and then was concerning. So
yeah, I think at this point we had gone in at like 7 or 8.
Yeah,
and
we
so
were
at
there
this
because
point-
we had put the kids to bed. So we had probably got there between 8 and 9.
Yeah.
And so at this point it's like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But we moved rooms, and I said to Josh, they're thinking something is seriously wrong. Up to, I think the way that I said it was, they're thinking something is seriously wrong, like to the extent that it could be cancer. And I just kind of remember you giving me like this look like of being gobsmacked or something, you know,
Right,
where it's just like,
I was just, where's the boot for her foot?
like, what?
Something's going on. She doesn't want to walk. So what
Yeah.
is that? So that was my focus.
Yeah. So then,
As I've said, I think several times throughout our podcast.
yeah. So then the second doctor, once we moved rooms, the second doctor came in and she said, like, I want to talk to you guys for a minute. Can one of you step out of the room? And we may talk about this later, but I have to be honest and say, like, I understood the logic of this, okay? Because you don't, like in a children's hospital, you wouldn't say to parents in front of a child, like, we think your kid might have cancer, right? But like, at the same time, taking the parents out separately and telling them that was also
Weird. Yeah.
not the best choice. Like, I
Yeah.
get that it was very late, and so there was likely nobody else to sit with Kenzie for a minute, and so she didn't want to separate, like, leave Kenzie in the room by herself while we both went out with her. But it was not an ideal situation. So
Yeah.
she took Josh out first. And do you remember anything that she actually said to you?
Probably not. I think I remember her just saying like she has cancer or
We think she might.
a
Yeah.
blood disease or something, and I was like, oh, what?
Yeah.
And then like I didn't know what to say. Like as we're transitioning, I'm like, do I tell you or is she gonna take you? Like she's gonna tell you the same thing she
Yeah.
just told me, so I just tell you this. So it was very weird, like you said, like because we're passing each other to go learn the same thing. So
When I went out with her in the hallway, she said, you know, we think that there's something going on based on some of the things that we're seeing. And so we want to draw some blood work. And for your sake, I am really hoping that it's not leukemia. And so I walked back in, and they explained that they were going to do some blood work, and it would take about 30 minutes from the time the lab got it until they knew what it was that they were looking at.
Mm-hmm. And I think once we got those results, I think my initial phase was sort of like what's the 7 layers of responses, like
denial.
I was totally in denial. I was like, we need to go get a second test somewhere. We need to get out. We need to go talk about this and then come back to it. I was not ready for the next step in the phase of like accepting that it was true and going upstairs and getting everything figured out. In the oncology floor, I was like, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, give me a boot because her leg is broke. It's all I'm here for.
Yeah.
Not here for this other crazy idea.
Yeah.
And I was not happy, obviously. But it wasn't... It's shocking information that you didn't expect. You weren't there because you were thinking of that case. It was just... What? We weren't aware of that possibility for her. So it was blindsiding.
Yeah.
And that's what... I mean, where we got to that diagnosis point, and I was just like, I don't know. I think it took me like probably the next 3 days to really settle into it. But we can keep going with where we are. So I just was, like with the initial diagnosis, I mean, that was the big, sorry. The initial diagnosis is like the big moment, you know, where it's like, that's where it was like, how do we even begin to talk about this or learn about this? We knew nothing. So I knew nothing.
So we watched the clock, you know, basically like lived by the clock for the next 30 minutes. And they came back and they said, based on your daughter's blood work, it looks like she has leukemia. We've already talked with the oncologist on call, and he agrees with that assessment. And we want to admit you to our oncology floor upstairs. And then, so that was probably at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Yeah. So at that point, we're super tired and super just floored with all this information and trying to follow along with like what we need to do. Because I mean, at that point, you know, I think my mind quickly transitioned once the diagnosis was like, yeah, this is actually the thing. It was like, okay, going into the acceptance phase, I was like, whatever we need to do, I need to move jobs, I need to move states. Where do we go to get her the best care? And that was where I focused for the rest.
Yeah.
But
so we had a lot of people come in. I remember a lady like came in and she handed me like this little blank notebook, and she was like, you're gonna have lots of questions, you're gonna have a lot of stuff and feel overwhelmed. You just use this, write stuff down when you think of it. And like, I just was like, okay, like, you know, I think I was still, you know, just so dumbfounded, you know. And so they finally took us upstairs to the oncology floor. By that point, it was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I sent Josh home to get stuff. You know, we didn't have any clothes with us. We didn't have anything. And so it was
because I think at that point I was like, I can't sleep right now.
Right. So
tired, but I wasn't gonna sleep.
It was like, you know, get some clothes, get a phone charger, like get some deodorant for us. Like, I don't even, you know, I have no idea like what's happening.
Yeah, we'll get into that later on how we learned to you know, prepare for going into hospitals.
Live in the hospitals.
Long time.
So Josh went home and I slept for a couple hours. And I think you probably had to tell, like, you probably told.
I think I told everybody
mom,
at the house. I mean,
you told my mom.
We were sort of keeping them informed, but it was like, it's one of those things where you don't tell people over through a text message.
Yeah,
so.
no. I mean, I had like texted people like, we're going to the emergency room. And then I text people like, she doesn't have a broken leg, but they're like doing some other tests. And then after that, like, I didn't, you know, tell them anything else. And I couldn't, you know, like and it took me at least a week, I think. Yeah. Even, you know, I couldn't tell people, and like, I just couldn't bring myself to like say or write the words. So I did, the only person that I texted Alex, my very dearest friend, and who's also a nurse, you know. And so I remember I woke up like when you got back. So it was like 5 or 6 in the morning. And I had a text from Alex that was like, I'm on my way. And that was all it said. And that was like the first time that I cried about it. And it was like, I don't know. I think that was like the first moment that it was really real, you know?
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. No, I think when I don't know how much I said about anything to my mom, because my mom came up and watched them that night.
Yeah, or the next day or something. Yeah, we had to switch.
And because we were staying and your mom had to go or something. So at that point, I think she had to leave and my mom came up or something. So I remember telling her, and I think I cried in our living room, of course. So,
and it was, you know, it was just like, you know, when I found out that she was, you know, dropping everything and driving the 4 hours to come to be with us. You know, that was the moment that I just like first kind of was like, this is, you know, really happening and I don't know what to do, you know?
Oh yeah. And it was, it's like 3 a.m. and I'm driving home to go get clothes and stuff. And I was supposed to be at work at like 7:30. So like I was getting all my stuff ready to go in because
it was his weekend to work.
As soon as we knew, I didn't really want to text all my sergeants to be like, this just happened. Should I come in?
Right.
I mean, in retrospect, I should have been messaging them at 3 a.m. But I also was just like, I'll just go in at 7, talk to whoever I see, and say,
and then leave.
Do you want me to stay? You want me to go? And luckily, they were all like, why did you even come here?
Yeah, like get out.
Please go take care of your kid. And so, thank you again for that. But. Without having any sleep that whole night, I think I was probably
just like
I'll just show up, and I couldn't do anything without the doctors anyway, so they were the ones doing all of the tests. So I was needed to be there with you guys.
Yeah. So, then, the next couple of days were really, really difficult. It took a couple of days because, of course, we were admitted like in the middle of the night between Saturday and Sunday. And so on Sunday, the hospital is not doing a lot of procedures or diagnostic testing like that. And so we had to wait until Monday to do a bone marrow biopsy to even find out what kind of leukemia she had. And so Sunday was a long day of waiting. And I don't know. I remember like sitting in the chair next to her bed and just looking at her and thinking like, I can't even think the word cancer. Like I cannot, I just can't accept it, you know? Even though like at the same time I understood, and I knew. And so that was something, everybody that came in for like the first week, they would say, do you know why you're here? I'm like, yeah, because my daughter's blood looks like she has leukemia. Like, what do you want?
Right. But the first week also was like a lot of learning for us, and there was a lot of explanation, and like, I mean, I really appreciate the level of information we got from Dayton Children's.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Did a very nice job.
Yeah. And they, I think it was a very wise tactic because there are lots of parents that are just in complete denial and are waiting to find out that they don't have cancer, or whatever. And so for the health professionals, it is such a smart, like, first question to ask, because it can kind of assess like where a parent is, emotionally. But for me, it just made me angry. If I could have answered,
I would have been like, let me go, because we're going to go get a second diagnosis. I don't believe it.
Right.
Yeah.
But for me, it had a very different, impact. Mm-hmm. But, but I also, being a mom that is in healthcare, my attitude and perspective was also very different, Yeah.
Right. And I think even from the beginning, what we have always sort of like been optimistic, or at least that's my key thing, is like staying optimistic just for ourselves and for Kenzie. Like, she's 2.5. We had all the doctors ready to help out with any support, and like the amount of encouragement we were getting from family and friends that she was going to be fine. And like I said, once we learned more about what leukemia was and the treatment plan, that was helpful as well to keep that optimism, and just be encouraged by, just the different things. Even as sad as we were that we ended up in that percentile of people that this can happen to, what have to deal with a child having this sort of thing. It was, I don't know, we wanted to stay positive and be encouraging. So no reason for us to be, I don't know, taken down by it, because we needed to stay positive for her so she could see that, because she was going to go through a lot of things. So
you bring up a good point, so like I said, we had to wait until Monday to kind of have a better idea of what we were even dealing with. And so until we had that bone marrow biopsy, there wasn't a whole lot they could tell us about what the treatment plan was going to look like, because there's different types of leukemia. And so I remember Sunday night, the oncologist came in and he said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I looked at your daughter's blood sample under a microscope. And originally we were just kind of hoping that it was ALL, which is kind of the easiest, most common form of leukemia. But your daughter has a lot of really weird looking red blood cells. And so I am very concerned that she may have AML, which has a very different prognosis and treatment plan. And usually I wouldn't say this to parents and just kind of be hoping for the best. But in your case, after having looked at your daughter's blood sample, I am concerned that we may be dealing with something else entirely, and I want you to be prepared. And that was like such a punch in the gut, because of course Sunday, because we couldn't get any answers, we're like furiously researching all the different types of leukemia. Mm-hmm. And, just trying to kind of get our heads around like what this might look like. And so, when he told us that, it was sort of like, the last 24 hours have been spent like reading And that does not sound good. And so then, the following evening, Monday night, after her bone marrow biopsy, I remember, I don't think you were with us when it happened. I feel like you were at work or getting more stuff from home or something. And these two, like a resident and a medical student, came in. And they said, they were looking very serious, and they were like, we wanted to let you know the results of your daughter's bone marrow biopsy. The doctor has already looked them over, but he didn't want to, wait until he's in tomorrow to tell you. So he asked us to come and bring you that news. And so, they're explaining all these different things, and they're like, but based on the bone marrow biopsy, it appears that your daughter does have ALL. We're so sorry, yada, yada, yada. And my friend Alex and I are sitting there, listening. And I think it was Alex that said, like, wait, you said ALL? Really? And she and I were ecstatic. And the residents and the medical student kind of looked at us like we were crazy. And I think, like, at that moment, that was really the first time with this journey that, like, I know there would be a lot of parents whose response would be like that they were hoping that it wasn't really leukemia after all, right? Like that it was a fluke or whatever. But to go from this may be a much worse kind of leukemia to no, it is the easiest, and we'll talk later about why that still isn't a fair thing to say, but the easiest kind of leukemia was the first time that I was able to, like, rejoice over bad news. And it really was kind of...
Well, and I think even for any cancer patient, like, you get those little, notices of good news in your course of treatment. Like, there's like, oh, you're going to have this medication and that's the one you're hoping for. Or,
right.
you know what I mean? I think that everybody's, if you've had to be on a treatment plan or know somebody that's had to follow something, you want them to have the best course through
right.
that. So,
and I think that
and
it
again,
was
just staying optimistic. I mean,
a
that's
very good opportunity to learn, like, even in the midst of, like, really bad news, I
think if you notice, we're both sort of tearing up still. It's still not super easy to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, we're glad to talk about it and happy to bring awareness to it.
But it's always like, and it probably will be for like another decade. It'll probably be difficult.
Yeah.
But, like, even in the midst of, like, awful news, that you don't want to hear, there are still positive things. And it's not fun, I think sometimes it's easier to just be angry, regardless, because it's not what you wanted. You didn't want to be on the oncology floor in a children's hospital at all. But that was kind of the first time that I learned, like, if we're going to survive this, we have to find, those little tiny
positive notes.
Those little tiny glimpses
right.
of things that we can, hold on to as kind of the life raft to survive, the difficulties that are going to come.
Right. No, and definitely, I mean, I think we've stayed lucky and had a good course for her over the last 2.5 years of treatments and everything. So there's people that have stories of, crazy things that I would never have to have wanted for, anybody to have to go through, even us. So, I mean, I'm glad for, the treatment plan that we've had and the success that we've seen with Kenzie, and just the amounts of, treatment plans that we've avoided because she's done so well.
And that is, obviously we'll talk more about, like, her treatment to come and things like that. But the fact of the matter is, like, it still is difficult to talk about or think about, but, like, Kenzie's done so well, and we are so lucky, and we are lucky that it was the kind of cancer that had any kind of treatment. I mean, there's so many positives, and that's not, like, me trying to, like, you know, be optimistic in the fight of bad. It's genuinely like we are blessed and we are thankful for what we've learned and what we've experienced over the past 2 years. We've been blessed with amazing doctors and friends and family and people we don't know to come and support us and love us and encourage us. There's so many things, you know, and we'll talk more about that. But so we, you know, don't want to end this on like me crying. I don't ever.
We'll make a bonus apology video for.
Don't ever cry. I don't like crying. I didn't plan to cry, so that's a little embarrassing. But blame it on being pregnant. I'm pregnant and I can't help it.
You're extra emotional. Yes. Good.
But
I don't know why I'm crying then. Sympathy.
But we have been very blessed in the spite of, you know, the difficult things that we faced. And so, you know, that's kind of the note that we want to end on today, while also sharing our story. Ooh, as I smack and make a lot of noise. And so we wanted to just kind of put it out there because it is the first thing that lots of people ask. And so we figure it's kind of a good place to start.
Yeah. So like, subscribe, follow, comment, send Katie some tissues, and we'll see you on the next adventure. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.